Hello folks, this is actually going to be a rundown of the D&D game and how it's progressed from the start to the current session. I believe it's session 20-ish. So this is actually going to go in a historical of where the group's been and where they're going. Right now I've got the map open up in Paint and I will be animating where we've went and where we originated from, where we've been, and how we travelled there, and where we are now, in some semblance of that order. So, first things first, I'm going to select a nice red colour, and I'll boost the size up a couple of notches just so it shows off. Now, the story begins in the spring fair of the Isles, right here. We originated and we dealt with some zombies and succeeded in our task of, well, the undead are about. We're bugger, we need to form an army to deal with this undead. So, we went on a boat ride to Zaradorn, where we met the Eagle Knights, as well as undead and the puppet for the first time. It was quite a chaotic area, but we succeeded, we achieved it all. However, we also claimed a resource that was deemed an artifact. The first area we claimed Soul Haven, an item that could destroy civilizations. That's where we first picked it up, was in Zaradorn. After succeeding in defending the city from both goblins and the undead, we left heading towards Anith Char. That's also where we met Caven as well. So Caven gave us a boat and we headed off to Anith Char. Anith Char is the capital city of the Dwarven Kingdoms of the continent Korgarth, where we as a party we melted the Dwarven Kingdoms. It was a political revolution between three parties: the nobles, the emperor, and the common dwarf. We allied ourselves up with the common dwarf because we really just couldn't be bothered. We also had a fourth faction, which is the Sahagin. We could have teamed up, or we could have formed some alliance of all four together. That single-handedly failed. Music's getting a bit loud. Well, for me. Probably fine for you guys. And we moved on. So we completed Anith Char, and of course when the revolution was occurring, we decided we're getting the hell out of Dodge. So we left to Thurkai, which is of the Scar. So we can see we went from the Spring Fair to Zaradorn, to Anith Char, to Thurkai. And Thurkai was a coastal city led by a drow queen. We got ourselves out, and Dullboard killed the arena population, the guard population, pretty much anyone he could get his axe on. After accomplishing this task, we decided we needed to get the hell out of Dodge. So we got on a boat after an elf told us roughly we should get the hell out of here. And we arrived in a very misty, very angry city of Cylon, where something was going down. And after a lot of suspicion and a lot of unsure what was occurring within the city, well, we had a choice between either abandoning the city and moving on, since the city was mental, crazy, or going to a banquet that we were invited to. So we decided to go to the banquet because, well, why not? Let's head over. Heading to the banquet unfortunately revealed the second appearance of the puppet, but this time a lot stronger and a lot more evil, claiming the entire city under his influence. Able to go against us and fight us, as well as traumatize several characters with experience, especially Durdle. But we were victorious and sealed up the puppet within an adamantium box. But things were not all to be safe. We continued on our travels to Alkar, which was a ruined city. Desolate. It was a destroyed ancient castle, but it was used by adventurers to stock up, a tavern to claim wares. We stocked ourselves up and heard of a passage into the Dwarven Underway, the highway of the dwarves, which spanned most of the world, but it was in disuse and ruins, and there was valuable treasures to be found. So we headed on into it. Indeed, we headed deep into the mountain, where it took us, what, very, very deep into the mountain. Actually, no. Holokar, or one of these two cities, was the Misty City. Mull was the ruined castle, where then we went and dug underground with the dwarven underway, where we were at an incredible distance, all the way to the Orcish tribes, where we met the troll tyrant. We did his tasks for him. We met Durdle's sister-in-law. We also met the Warman of Teeth. We annihilated the entire camp and decided that we should adventure further and claim more covert victories. We'd have heard of an interesting castle, a dwarvish abandoned fortification. Its name, it passes me in the term of dwarves, but I do know the English name. Translated from dwarvish to English, it was Boat Murdered. We discovered the fortification and headed on down, claiming some valuable treasure on our ways. After successfully also dealing with a zombified dragon, we headed to Kais, a coastal city. About a day's travel, where we used our time to purchase incredible wares of magical prowess, bags of bombs, and other goods to empower the squad. However, the city was in quarantine and siege, a very difficult situation to be in. The Orcish tribes, not unlike the one that we had destroyed, these ones were bigger, badder, and had a lot of bugs. Were we're going to lay siege to the city. We were locked in. There was no chance of escape unless we barged our way out. So, as strong adventurers, we manned the walls. We fended off the Orcish hordes of giant flying wasp spider eaters, of giant spiders, and enormous centipedes, as well as hordes of demons and half-orcs and odd ramming siege equipment. We bested them all. However, we had to leave. And that, when we were journeyed with Caven upon our victory, we left, heading towards a strange ice formation in the water, where the skeleton lord was there. We were able to claim not only his destruction, but we were able to acquire some loot and some new sailors. That was where we left off at the last end of the session. This mild recap is just to give you a highlight of where we have been, where we have travelled, and where we currently are. And we are currently right here. Hopefully this will give you a bit of background for our next session, where myself, I am playing as Durdle Hollandforge, and Sir Kolinsky, who is playing as Tenroujima, will be doing some roleplay session in a few seconds. We'll see it right there. Talking about the new treasures that we acquired from this undead entity and Chakathor. Enjoy. Alright. Okay. Oh, hey Tenru, you gonna help me out with these? Durdle's...
Yes, I'll be looking at them with you.
Durdle's carrying all these treasures we loot from the island and wandering down into the hulls of the ship, heading towards his cabin. He opens the door and, Sarah, not carefully, but not brutally, puts and lays all the items on the table, lining them up, and just making sure that all of the items are there. And he counts each of them. And he goes, well, I have to admit, that's unexpected, but it's good to have company for this. Here, just pull up one of the chairs, I'll just get one myself. Darryl motions and gets one of the chairs and sits down at the table.
Sure, walk to the part of the cabin where the chair is. Take the chair and sit next to Durdle.
Alright, now, where to get started? First things first. Durdle sorts out the table, and he starts pointing to each one, more in a cataloguing manner, just to make sure that we've got everything, looking to Tenroujima, in case he's missed an item. We've got the brass-plated skull, the very very nice platinum gauntlets here, a pendant with a star sapphire, this set of dwarven bracers, you know, the gold ones, and a gnomish coin and an elvish coin. Everything seem in order, you think?
Yeah, I think we have everything that we should be looking at.
Alright. Well, how about we start from the smallest, or to the biggest, or the biggest to the smallest? Durdle motions, you know, to the gauntlets of the coins.
Yeah, sounds good.
Alright, Durdle nods and picks up one of the gauntlets and looks at it. Alright. Durdle motions and flexes the gauntlets a bit and checks out. Checks mainly for articulation in the joints and has a look at it. Well, I'll tell you now, this doesn't look as if it would protect you from much. Made from very nice, thick platinum. Some descriptions on it. Drow, if I remember right. But yeah, this is decorative, not exactly made for any form of protection. More just display, bragging rights, I guess. Although it would fetch a very pretty penny. Here, Tenrou, can you make anything of this inscription, right? You know, we read it on the deck, this one right here. Durdle places it next to Tenrou and just rubs a finger underneath some of the drow. It reads, "Only power matters." You make anything of that?
Tenroujima will take the bracelets, have a good look at it, and she will nod. It's definitely drowish nature. She takes a look at the words. Power is everything. It doesn't really strike me. May have read it somewhere, but I can't really say its significance or if it has any.
Yeah. Pardon me for being brash, but I mean, well, you're the most religious of the group. Anything you might have read about it that might have brought it forth at all? Durdle is also he's pulling out a couple of pieces of parchment from the table over to him, as well as a quill and some ink, and he starts scribbling things down on the parchment. I mean, I know it's just words, but you know, it's just in case this might be a lot more valuable. May have been an artifact or something.
Mm-hmm. And do I know if it has a religious value or significance, rather?
The name is very generic. The words are very generic. It is sort of the thing you would expect from drowish crafted items to have these inscriptions. Elves always like to decorate their items, and drow tend to do it as in more display-like things. Elves like really nice clothing. Drow like really ornament armor.
Right.
The words themselves do not seem to have any significance. You know, at least they're too generic.
Alright. No, I can't at least recall that it has any religious significance.
Well,
maybe a priest someday wore it, but I can't say.
Durdle nods and actually scribbles this down. Says, "So you think this may actually have been used in some form of temple?" Durdle seems quite perked up by this.
Well, I can't say for sure where it came from, but they do like to dress up very pretty.
Well, actually, Durdle leans back a bit, puts the quill down. Have you ever actually had to handle any artifacts from, well, your order, your temples? I'm more looking for background to you. You know, if we're gonna, I don't see any magical. I mean, you did tell us there's no magical things in this, so we're best off, well, selling it or finding an appropriate buyer. So, I guess I'm asking more for history. So if I do try to sell these, we get these for the best price we can.
Oh. Saying what I know, or what I know about the drow, or elves in general, it's hard to say where they even come from. It's been there for a while as well, so it could have been anywhere.
Durdle waves his hands. Oh no! I'm actually asking about any artifacts that your order may have had. Like, explain your order. Do you use artifacts? Do you use decorations, or just tell me about you? And Durdle starts continuing to write out some things.
Well, I don't particularly belong to any order. I grew up worshipping Pelor, being very interested in his ways. My father was and she looks a little sad here. He was a priest of Pelor in the temple in the town where I grew up.
Durdle nods, kind of as if he's expecting it to go on.
As for relics, I did hear from the other clerics and priests at the temple that they had one in their possession, but I never saw it, and there are many stories that Pelor has granted artifacts of great power to the people to do great deeds against the undead. But, yeah.
Durdle is still nodding, and he actually seems to be scribbling with quite a fervour on the parchment, and he seems to end it and like slides the paper away. Well, that raises up another item. If and there's a big if this is a religious item. See, okay, again, I'm going to use your example. I know it's kind of a stumper here, but as I've said before, I don't have much of a religious background, and although with current situations, that might change. But has there ever been a case or something where someone has, say, stolen one of the artifacts to sell it, or is... I mean, for example, if we suddenly bump into someone that claims that this is an artifact of ultimate glory and we should donate it to their local Hall of Heroes as a tribute to their city, I don't think they would take well to us suddenly deciding to sell it.
If they have, the ones that got it stolen probably wouldn't voice it, as it would be a great embarrassment losing such an item, but at least I haven't heard myself of people stealing them. They may have tried but never succeeded.
Daryl nods. What's the practice for lost artifacts or lost items? Do they accept them in? Do they reward the finder?
I'm sure there will be some reward, but I can't imagine it having the same value as the item itself.
Durdle, patiently nods. Actually, why are you down here looking at these items with me? Just sort of, I never took you for someone that would appreciate material goods.
It's not that I'm interested in the items to have them. I'm more interested in the history behind them. And I'm particularly interested in these braces, since they're from elfish culture.
You mean these gauntlets?
Yeah.
Daryl smiles. I have to admit, they're made from platinum themselves, which is a very rich metal. You know the half ogre that we've got? You see that sword that he wielded? Made from the same stuff. Wonder how much that cost him.
She'll look a bit surprised herself and say, yeah, I can imagine how he swings that around so easily as he does.
Well, let's be happy or hope we're never on the receiving end of it.
She nods. Yeah, that would hurt.
So, and Durdle sort of turns and goes, "Do you have any interest? Like, so history entertains you? Like, you like learning about the history of items and cultures and things?"
I have. There was not much for me to do in the village, so I usually read a book about history or religion.
So even from a youthful age, you had the passion for adventure and exploring.
There was some passion, but let's just say my parents didn't exactly agree.
Right. And he sort of puts the gauntlets down and goes, "Well, let's look at these then." And Durdle puts two of his fingers on the coins and pulls them towards them. I think this will probably be the more interesting of the items, since the rest don't seem to have much in the way of inscriptions upon them. And Durdle, pulls up an iron coin, sort of a dull grey, and flips it around and shows off a gnome with what looks like a scorpion on it. And he goes, "Okay. From what I can tell, not much of a guy that's able to tell from looking at this. This just looks like it's an iron coin. I'm going to assume it's a gnomish coin. I don't imagine much of the other races deciding they want to embellish a gnome. I don't see dwarves wanting to. I don't see horned. Similar. Dwarvish, an iron currency, reasonable size, the size of just one of our silver or gold coins. It seems, but made from iron. I'm not. Can you make anything of what the gnome and the porcupine is?" And Durdle passes it over to Tenroujima.
Tenroujima takes the coin and has a good look. She looks around and yes, I seem to remember him. His name was Harlech Half-Sized, and I do think it was a coin of his victory over the killer porcupine.
Durdle nods. He goes, "Well, sadly we don't have much to go off of. I mean, these could be old coins, they could be new coins. We've no idea how historic, so these could be as valuable as a copper coin or as valuable as a platinum coin." Durdle then picks up the elvish one. But these, I get the feeling, even though they look copper, and he's flipping it around in his fingers, and there's a leaf on it, we noticed these were elvish, and specifically, I can tell these are old. This is old copper, and he's rubbing it. And what's even more interesting is, if these are elvish, the elves used metal. Durdle hands it over, but it says, "But can you make anything of this leaf that you can see on it?" And Durdle hands over the coin to Tenroujima, taking back the gnomish one and putting it back on the table.
Taking the coin, Tenroujima has a good look. She moves a finger over the leaf and yes, yeah. These will be coins from the Sun Elven Courts. There's not really much to say about them. All I can really say is they're from there. I don't really know much about the Southern Elven Courts.
Burl nods and takes the coin back and goes, "Well, these I would imagine would fetch an enormous amount of money from the right buyer, relative to what they are."
Indeed, it is rather strange for elves to be using metals for coining.
Indeed, I would expect they would use bones or some other form of organic material. The legends, they eat one another. Ugh, grisly business. Durdle rests the coin on the table. Although, let's move on to the kind of gemmed skull we've got here. And Durdle puts a hand firmly on top of the head and brings it over. Right. So this is an interesting piece, and Durdle flips it over and starts analysing each all over. I can't see any engravings or anything. It actually just simply looks like a brass plated skull, but I can't see if it's fully brass or if it's a skull coated in brass metal. It's hard to tell. Durdle brings it over and actually looks in the eye sockets, and he puts one finger on each. He says, we've got a large amber here, and we've got a piece of onyx here, which makes it look quite a bit interesting. Durdle sort of like waves it slightly at Tenroujima. Quite spooky though, you know, one orange, one black eye.
You seem to notice that Tenroujima is kind of keeping her distance from the skull, not really that interested in touching or coming close to it.
Durdle picks up on this and puts it off on the far side of the table from Tenroujima, and swiftly moves on to pick up the next item, which is the gold bracers on the table. Now, straight away, these are dwarvish. Now I can tell these are dwarvish because, and Durdle runs a finger along one of those seams. See this seam right here, and see this lock, and he unclasps the lock to show. This is traditional dwarvish architecture, and he also Durdle flips his wrist, revealing his own bracer. I think, see the similarities? You see the similarities of the clasp here and the clasp on the bracer? Proper dwarvish lock, that is. Proper dwarvish lock. So, if we can hopefully though, Durdle then looks on the inside, making sure specifically that there is no emblem of the Wagner clan on these items. And he clasps and seals the seal, and seals the lock to bind them and clasp them together, and hands one off to Tenroujima. Solid gold plated these are. Gold all the way through, and of course, you know, as you could probably tell, because they're gold, not exactly the most protective. Gold's a very soft metal. If you give enough force, that entire thing will crumple in your hands. Try not to be forceful with it. Durdle just decides to actually, you know, he's looking at Tenroujima admiring the lock, and just pauses for a second and goes, why are you afraid of the undead? You've got the power to turn them to dust and ashes. I can respect fear. And Durdle motions slightly to the skull. That's an inanimate skull. If anything, there's nothing that skull can do. And of course you told me that you've lost many family to the undead. But surely that should bring feelings of vengeance and revenge, not fear. Especially Durdle taps and just like sort of flicks the skull in the side of the, you know, where the temples would be.
Alright. Tenroujima's studying the bracer. Notice having the skull flipped, she jolts a little, and well, seeing what they can do when they are actually, well, they seem to be actually pretty intelligent at the time at what they were doing, since, well, my village isn't exactly on the borders where there usually skirmishes with the undead and, well, paladins, clerics, and what have you. They actually seem to have made a surprise attack on villages in the area, and that seeing that do that, it is rather scary, as they're not just being their little zombie-like selves.
Sure nods. Well, since we're heading there, maybe we can find out the source for this and put it to an end. We're going to have to deal with the undead one way or another. If we can find some way to weaken them or disarm some of their strength, Durdle also pauses for a second. When did the undead suddenly acquire some of their intelligence? Was it just before you left to go to the spring fair?
It was quite a few days before I came to the spring fair. That's pretty much when I ran from my city and thought, well, I'll be going somewhere else, as I don't really like it down south of Jakarta more.
Durdle nods. Well, I get the feeling maybe the two events are, well, obviously related. The fact that we, Durdle motions to himself and Tenroujima, were asked to amass an army to deal with an undead threat that was looming. That's obviously Chikathmore was the first to suffer this intelligent undead. Durdle pauses. We should head there as soon as possible to find out what we can do. Durdle turns and says, "You've already told me briefly about Chikathmore and the politics. Not only are the undead beating down the doors of the cities, but you also have the politics of the duchies, the counties, all vying for leadership and the infighting. So we'd have these two enemies to fight, the undead and politicians. What more can you tell me? I mean, this is your homeland. Surely you may have a strategy, an idea of how to best approach it to cull the undead. Pardon my poor use of the words, you know, they're already dead, but find a way to remove that intelligence from them. Surely you must have an idea of how to best approach it."
Well, I may have not phrased that as I should have. They themselves weren't exactly intelligent, but what they were doing, raiding a village so far from the actual front lines. Well, not really front lines at the time, but raiding one so far in that you could imagine is not really something they would do. You fought in that with me. They aren't particularly smart. So
Durdle nods. But so they weren't necessarily smart, but they were using some form of tactics. They were attacking weak points, supply lines, villages, instead of just randomly the odd skeleton or zombie just walking into a wall.
that would seem as accurate the answer I could give right now. It was, as you can imagine, pretty tactical at the time.
Durdle nods. Do you have any idea where they might be originating from, where all these undead are pouring out? I understand, of course, the undead come from any corpse, but did they have a base of some sort, somewhere where they were originating from?
They always seem to be coming. Tenroujima takes a little parchment out of her clothing, and she draws a little map, and to the side, imagine the scar, and this little land bridge is usually where the skirmishes and larger battles happen. With all the paladins, clerics keeping them at bay, it's very rare for them to be so far inland.
Durdle nods. So there is some way that the undead are breaching the line.
Apparently, I can't really say much else about it. How, why, but they seem to be able to. I haven't heard of it happening again since, but it happened once, so it may happen again.
Well, we need to go over there, and we've got 2 challenges when we get there. One, finding a way to reduce, stop, or mitigate the damage caused by the undead's constant assault. And 2, find a way to get people that don't seem to like each other to like each other.
This actually has a little giggle. To be honest, I don't think that will be possible.
Well, do you have any other ideas of how we could find a way to get an army from these people that don't like each other?
The common cause would be undead, and for that might just be enough. She looks a little sad, and just have to give them an incentive.
Durdle sits and thinks, and he looks and says, if we destroy the undead, and Durdle looks over the map and points to the land bridge, if we find some way to reduce or remove this problem from will the rest of the people appreciate us for doing that?
I'm sure everyone in Ravenspire and the Red Sands will be glad that we did it. The ones to the south honestly don't care anymore. They're safe down there. She looks a little angry here, and she says they're like spoiled children.
Living off the hard work that you're providing so they can live a safe and cheap life.
Indeed.
So that'll be the challenge. I get the feeling that Raven's Spire will be the easiest for us to help. It'll be the other 2 cities that it will be the challenge. You said there was 3, yes? Durdle points to the west side of the island and the south side. And these are the other 2. What were they called?
Nightsport, Ravenspire, and the other one we know, or on the map, is Kralos.
Durdle looks at them. So that's the 3 cities.
Well, there are more, but you probably have to ask for them.
Durdle nods.
You know there are 9 duchies, and well, since I'm saying it like this, it's probably not really. Yeah. Hooray for the scalpel! There we go. Continue.
Has Chicathmore ever been united? Or has it always been split into these 3 territories? Wedgemore, if we find a way of claiming the land, Ravenspire and Red Sands will, find themselves a lot more comfortable being allied with us and helping us. But 2 cities, when there's how many? Durdle looks to the map. How many cities are there? You said there's the 2.
There are, yes, there are 9 major cities, each being the capital of the respective duchies. The names are the same as the duchy's name. So Kralos will be the Duchy of Kralos, and I think you can deduce this. And she roughly points where they are on the map. And we'll start at the top.
Durdle just pauses for a second and says, "Wait a minute. So you say the south? They're very noble, very rich. That's where the wealth is. Sort of more artistic and theatre. Very cultural rather than warlike."
She knows.
Durdle looks quite inquisitive and thinks, so perhaps not threatening them with the force of the undead, but more showing that this can impinge on their way of life. Dressing up as perhaps a noble, Durdle eyes the star sapphire copper amulet on the table. Well, perhaps there might be a way for us to convince them to help through diplomacy rather than threats and, you know, the undead are coming. Last time we done that, people just went, let them.
She lets out a deep sigh, and yes, I'll be honest, that's the reply I expect from them. They see it as being so far away, they don't care. They rather have their little games than actually bother with anything.
Durdle nods. Well, there is always other ways we can deal with it. We'll be stopping off in Nightsport before we head off to Ravenspire. Perhaps we can get something figured out when we get there.
Pause. I thought we were going the Scar route, which led to Tharkai, and then we immediately go to Ravenspire, skipping Nightsport.
Durdle sits and just looks at the map and goes, well, that's if supplies last. Durdle looks to Tenroujima and goes, well, we might be stopping there regardless. From what Caven's told me of looking at navigations, there's one thing you can't control when you're out in the sea, and it's the weather. We might need to make a stop, and if we do, well, there's some things that we can do. If not, well, hopefully we can just still ride up the Scarway and get ourselves in, although I am not looking forward to stopping by Thrakai. That's something where Dullboard's legacy will haunt us. As well as we've got a very angry drow that might be there looking for us.
Right, imagining her potential since she was summoning things with such ease, there's a good chance she'll be still running around, screaming blood and murder.
Well, when that comes, I think most of us should stay below deck. Let Caven and Durdle, and Thorak deal with any encounters. Me, you, and Usmok, we will stay under deck.
I do believe Usmok. Oh, no, he did join us. He just came late on his new eagle, going off into nowhere. That's quite a sight.
Yeah, Durdle nods. Well, anyway, I appreciate your knowledge, but let's continue looking at these items. Durdle then brings the Star Sapphire over, and he starts talking about it and discussing it with Tenroujima, and brings back the piece of paper and starts scribbling on. Spending some time just talking to her, looking at the amulet itself, the gem within the amulet, and discussing how valuable it could potentially be. Just hopefully giving it a juicy appraisal, and discussing that what he's actually trying to do is hopefully find ways to oversell these items, to be able to talk about them more than they're actually worth. For example, if an item's worth 100 gold, maybe be able to get 105 or 110 for it. And Durdle rests the items on the table and goes, well, if you fancy keeping a look at these items, you can keep me company. I'm going to be spending quite some time measuring how much metal's in each of these and approximating, as well as looking if Caven's got any books on history that I could look through. We're going to take a few days to get to any port that could potentially buy these anyway, so it gives me time to properly evaluate how much these items cost and how much we could potentially get for them. You're welcome to keep me company if you want.
It's been good enough for today. Maybe I'll come by tomorrow or later today.
Durdle nods and says, and we'll see what we can plan for Chicathmore to see if we can help them as well. If there's anything that you think that comes to your head that we could stop by a port to purchase before we land, anything that could maybe help, we could trade or help our situation any, make sure to stop by Caven or tell him, or stop by me and talk to me about it. We'll see what we can do.
I will. Jima stands up, walks out the door, and at the door she makes a slight bow and continues out somewhere on the ship.
Durdle nods his head and continues checking the items for several hours on.
And as each character goes to their own, the distance they hear a rumble, as if a hungry god is looking for prey in the sea. A storm is brewing up, and silent rain begins to fall on the ship. It's clear that it will be a hot night, and as the ship continues, it would seem that the weather is not looking too great.